Hey guys, Hybrid here with my kind of long-awaited, kind of hyped up for Aquaman screenplay. The last one before my Justice League one, so it's a pretty big deal, I guess, to me personally, and to any of my viewers that really like these screenplays. It's titled Aquaman, Rise of a King. If you couldn't tell, this is the origin of Aquaman. Now, I don't well, I do explain his powers, obviously, but, it's not like the other ones, really, because it's kind of different. Like, I think if you were to compare it to any of them, it'd be more like the Wonder Woman one versus the Superman one. It's definitely not like the Batman one. Batman one was pretty unique. I went with a very distinct tone with that one. With this one, I'm going for I'd say a similar tone with my Wonder Woman one that I did, because, believe it or not, these two characters are actually really closely connected together. They both have Greek roots, Atlantis, and Amazon, or Amazonians. So, yeah, let's begin with the screenplay. It's a relatively, I'm assuming it's going to be a longer one than my others, but like I always do, just, relax. If you want to turn off the screen, go to another tab, do that. As long as you listen. All I really care about is you listening to this, enjoying it. When you're done, comment below your thoughts on it. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, like it to show that you did like it, and yeah. So the film starts off with the same flashbacks we saw in Wonder Woman, but instead of the ending of it focusing on Gaia creating Themyscira and the Amazons, it shows Poseidon creating Atlantis. Now, due to the pact that the gods made with Gaia, Poseidon has to leave Earth, but the Atlanteans are special to him, obviously, and Atlantis is his own personal creation on Earth. So he gives one Atlantean, the first king named Atlan, the trident of Poseidon. Now, if you couldn't tell, I took this part from the New 52 origin, because Atlan is the first king of Atlantis. He was currently just wrapped up in the last Aquaman arc, the Dead King. So I have several Easter eggs and several nods to the Aquaman comics and mythology, if you can find them out. It wasn't that hard actually to do that, so Aquaman has a very rich mythology. But anyways, he gives Atlan the Trident of Poseidon, which has vast magical abilities. I'm not going to go specifically into what these magical abilities are, but they're magical in nature and they're vast. So Atlan rules Atlantis well with his two other brothers as counsel, leading it to end up becoming the dominant civilization of the ancient world, as it is commonly known as today. His brother Orin, though, betrays him for the right to rule, creating a civil war in ancient Atlantis. Now, during the Civil War, obviously we get massive battles here, large sea creatures fighting each other. If whoever directs this wants to go that route, but the most important thing is that there is a civil war between the Atlanteans, and Atlantis goes to turmoil, ending with Atlan fighting Orin for the Trident of Poseidon, which the Trident of Poseidon, if you couldn't tell, gives the true authority to rule Atlantis. Now, while they're fighting over this, it causes it to expel catastrophic energies, which end up sinking Atlantis. But before the people die, because at this time the Atlanteans, yes, they may be a little bit stronger than the humans, faster, but they're not able to breathe underwater, because obviously Atlantis at this time is still an island. So Atlan uses the last of his abilities with the Trident of Poseidon to enhance the physiology of the Atlanteans so they could survive the depths of the ocean. So that's how I'm going to explain why the Atlanteans can breathe underwater. It's magical in nature. I stay true to the fact that the Atlanteans are technically magical beings, not just random mutated creatures that many people might perceive them as. So the third brother, Armo, if you couldn't tell, it's a nod to Armin, big Aquaman fan, but Armo with his son Arion, spelled Arion, rule Atlantis for future generations to come. So that's how I'm going about this one. Now, we open to the funeral, though in present day, of Thomas Curry, followed by the reading of his will, giving Arthur, who's currently 14 years old, the Curry Lighthouse located in Amnesty Bay, Maine. Believe it or not, that is actually where the lighthouse is at in comic books, so I didn't make up that address. I looked it up and everything to make sure. Now, Arthur starts looking throughout his father's old office, as his father was a maritime pilot. Now, the reason I went this route instead of just a pure lighthouse keeper, like he traditionally is because I looked it up, and lighthouse keepers aren't around anymore, per se, or at least not a paid position for them. Usually, lighthouse keeping is by the Coast Guard. So, I learned something while researching for the screenplay, just in case you guys didn't know that, I thought I'd share that information. So, instead, I made it so he's a maritime pilot, which they have similar roles, essentially, really leading people out in the sea. But while cleaning around the office, looking around, he comes upon a map, which happens to be very heavily noted by his father, sparking curiosity in Arthur. Now, I don't really go into specifics about who is watching Arthur, who's the guardian. You know, it could be an uncle, an aunt, friends, parent, something like that, but I don't really go into it. So if you're wondering at this time, 14-year-old Arthur, who's watching him, it's not really important to me. If I were to make it the actual film, I'd obviously go more into it. Now, the map is noted with the location that has written on it, the Blue City, and Atlanta, Arthur's mother. Which is curious to Arthur, because Arthur wants to know about his mother. He doesn't really know much about his mother at all. So Arthur then secretly prepares a ship with a life vest because he can't swim, and I'll get more into that later. But Arthur journeys far into the Atlantic Ocean to the coordinates that were on the map, to the point where all you can really see is beautiful blue waves sparkling with the sun. It'd be a really cool scene, a really nice scene, with the sun out and all that stuff to film. But at the location, nothing is there. He waits for a few hours, nothing happens, but soon he notices signs of a storm beginning to occur. So he begins to leave. Now, when he's starting to leave, really leave, the storm picks up more, and eventually the ship gets damaged and sinks. Now, Arthur at this time is not able to get back to his life vest because he took it off at this time he took it off, but he starts to drown, and he doesn't know how to swim, so he's freaking out, and she says, yelling for help, and he passes out. Now, Arthur wakes up inside a strange room surrounded by people that look like humans, but speak a totally another language. Before he can really get up, they restrain him, and he tries telling them who he is, but that doesn't do anything, because these strange people are just like, why is he doing this? And they restrain him, and resume what they were doing before he tried getting up. Now, after what seems like a few more hours, a beautiful woman appears, very regally dressed, similar to the presence of, I'd say, Wonder Woman's mother, I can't say her name, but anyways, it's the same kind of presence, a very royal presence, and she speaks perfect English to Arthur, but instead of calling him Arthur, she keeps on calling him Orin, which is odd to him. Now, she escorts him down a hall to an unknown destination where he asks her name, to which she responds, Atlanta, and Arthur immediately asks, is he dead? Because as far as he knows, his mother is dead. She responds no, to which he asks, is he in heaven? And she says, close, you're in Poseidon. I think that's how you say it, Poseidonis, the capital city of Atlantis. Now, before you can respond any further, ask any more questions, she does magic, basically. She speaks in a strange language, which makes Arthur feel strange for a short amount of time, but then it goes away. And basically what she does is she kind of enchants him a little bit so that he can have an all tongue, like an omni-tongue kind of, like he can understand all languages, speak all languages kind of thing. And I'll go more into that later, why that's important. But anyways, she opens two large doors at the end of the hallway, revealing a throne room with two Atlanteans in them. Now, the two Atlanteans are Orm, who's later revealed to be Arthur's half-brother, and Vulko, the royal advisor. So within these private walls, Arthur is told what happened. He blacked out because, yes, he is half Atlantean, but he hasn't used his gills at all. So they're developed relatively, but they weren't used. They weren't practiced. Just like any other muscle, it's like trying to lift a lot of weight when you've never lifted weight before. It's very hard, and your muscles get tired fast. So while he was still kept alive by his gills, he didn't use them enough yet. He wasn't used to it. His body didn't adjust to it, so he still passed out as any other person would from lack of oxygen. And the only reason why they found him out there was because, not because he was like really close to Atlantis, but because he let out a very desperate telepathic yell that he probably didn't realize he was doing, but is very unique to the royal family, that they have this telepathic ability. And with that, his mother heard him, because obviously they're mother and son, and that's how they found Arthur and brought him to Atlantis. Now, Arthur, shocked at this revelation that he's half Atlantean, says his father told him that his mother drowned at sea, which is why his father never let Arthur go to the sea alone or learn how to swim, in fear that if he learned how to swim, he tried swimming out into the ocean to find his mother or something about his mother, which technically he ended up doing anyways. But his mother says that that's not true, but a lie. But also, Arthur, the reason why she left and everything was because they wanted Arthur to try living a somewhat normal life, which would be impossible to do with, the fact that his mother is a queen. So the duties of being queen far outweigh, it'd make it really hard to, try living a normal life that his father really hoped for him to have, which obviously she respected, Atlanta respected. But Atlanta curiously asked, how his father's doing, because it's odd that Arthur is here, and his father's not, or, it's just odd he's here in general when he should be with his father. Now, Arthur, sorry, I don't know why I'm mispronouncing myself. Arthur sadly responds that his father's dead, to which Atlanta quietly sheds a tear to herself, while still holding a very strong, regal appearance, because she's a queen. She can't really, show that type of emotion too much, because, it kind of ruins the presence, not really presence, but, the image the queen has. But anyways, Volko then leads Orin, as, he's being called that by a few people, but eventually they start calling him Arthur, to his quarters, where he will now live, saying that his lessons begin tomorrow. This is where the enchantment, I'm just going to call it an enchantment, the enchantment that his mother placed on him comes in handy. So, as someone of royal lineage, he technically is a potential king, and he's the firstborn. We don't know that yet, but as far as everyone's concerned, Orm's the firstborn, but technically Arthur is, and as someone who could potentially be the king, one of the most important things is communication. So this enchantment allows him basically to communicate with all people of all different languages, to allow him to be a very effective king, a very effective ruler, essentially. So we then get shown a time-lapsing montage of Arthur growing up in the rest of his teenhood into adulthood, like mid-20s in Atlantis, getting instructed by Volko, essentially, that's the exclusive instructor. Every once in a while, you'd probably get another instructor, but from, I'd say 90% of his learning in Atlantis would be by Volko. Now, with Atlanta, Orm, and obviously Volko, he grows up in Atlantis, now fully aware of his Atlantean lineage, and, he's accepted his place as a prince of Atlantis currently, while also he's been developing his other abilities more, such as, his ability to live underwater, his telepathic abilities to give suggestions to aquatic life. Not control aquatic life, but give, lead aquatic life, give them instruction. It's a birthright to the rulers of Atlantis, because it's, a sign that, leadership, something like that. But anyways, during the discussion with Volko on leadership, he quotes Aristotle. Yes, Aristotle, famous Greek philosopher, when he says, "He who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader." This is because he's talking on the subject of a monarch needing to listen to his or her citizens as much as tell them what to do and lead them. Because, you're not a king without your people. That's the basic principle here. So this inspires Arthur to visit the various cities and city-states of Atlantis in order to understand what the people or citizens want and need throughout Atlantis. Now, when Arthur goes to a part called Xebel, I think that's how you pronounce it, it's spelled Xebel, he meets a beautiful red-headed Atlantean named Mira. So about after 2 weeks of being there, they fall in love with each other, but Arthur has to return. He promises to come back, which, his mother gives the blessing for. Unlike for Thor, Odin really wasn't approving of this, but Arthur's mother is very approving. She's very understanding about this, because obviously she fell in love with Arthur's father and gave birth to Arthur. So she gives him the blessing to go back there and be with Mira, which he happily does. But a few months later, while they're together, because they're not married yet per se, but it's like close to that. So it's like very, very serious dating. But they're together, and he hears this cry for help, waking him up due to his telepathic abilities. Obviously, no one else hears it because they don't have the same abilities in Xibel, but he journeys to the source of it where he finds a whale hurt due to a spear from whale hunters. Now, feeling its pain, he comforts it until it dies, promising to protect the other sea life. Now, this is when a group of elites, basically they're like Atlantean assassins, but I just call them elites. They come down to Xibel to attack Arthur, which he quickly kills many of them, because obviously he's much more stronger than them, powerful than them, because he's of royal blood, following, the rest of them to the surface. Now, this is where the problem happens. Because Arthur is half Atlantean, he has a much more higher tolerance to the surface world, like heat, things like that, than the other Atlanteans do. I'm not saying that they dry up immediately or anything, but he's much more easily adapted to it. Well, it takes some time for Atlanteans to get used to the surface world because it's drier up there, and other factors come into play. So he beats one of the elites near death in a brutal interrogation. This would be a pretty brutal scene just to show how much Arthur doesn't deal with crap, like he gets shit done kind of thing. Now, the elite reveals that he was sent by the King of Atlantis to kill him. He wasn't told why, just he was told by the King of Atlantis to kill him, and he was following orders. So, confused by this statement, he journeys back to Atlantis to find Orm on the throne, with Volko gone and his mother gone. Now, Orm tells Arthur, as he mockingly says, not Orm, but Arthur, he is not welcomed here, commencing in a fight. Now, this is going to be a pretty cool fight scene visually with all the water and stuff like that, because one thing that Orm has, that in my movie at least, one thing that Orm has that Arthur doesn't have is hydrokinesis. Now, Orm, though, doesn't have the telepathic suggestion ability either, so it kind of balances out in a way. You're going to see why later. And also, Orm is much more in touch with his Atlantean side, obviously because he was born in Atlantis, raised from the get-go in Atlantis, so he also has some magical abilities that Arthur doesn't have and hasn't learned at all. So they get into a fight where it's revealed, more history about them, both of them. Now, Orm is revealed to be the descendant of the corrupt Orin, whose family actually married into Atlanta's family with Orm for the crown, which is why he doesn't have the telepathic suggestion ability, but he has the ability to manipulate water innately without magic. So, using this ability with a very unprepared Arthur, he almost kills Arthur before Volko appears and saves him with Mira, bringing him to the Curry Lighthouse. Now, when he regains consciousness, Volko explains basically everything to him, the truth. The fact that Volko left because his mother disappeared randomly, but after that Volko got suspicious and left himself, searching out for what happened, and in the process he found out that Oliver's dad's death was actually a product of Orm. Orm, he basically plotted the death of Arthur because he wanted Arthur to come to Atlantis so Orm could kill Arthur, which he tried doing but obviously failed. The reason being because it's revealed that Orm is not the actual first son of Atlantis, or he's not the next in line, it's really Arthur. Which is why his mother's disappearance also occurred, because she's the only one that could speak out about it. So with her gone, all the Atlanteans think that Orm is the next in line. So, in fact, Arthur is the true king of Atlantis, not Orm, which, it's reassuring to Arthur to know that, but he's like, I can't defeat Orm, he's a master of the oceans. Get it, Ocean Master? But Volker reminds him about his unique gift that only comes to the true royal bloodline, which is the telepathy, mental suggestion to the aquatic life, and tells him about the legendary trident of Poseidon, which is said to only be able to be wielded by the true king of Atlantis, and is the absolute authority of ruling Atlantis. So, if you wield the trident of Poseidon, you are the king. Nothing can say you're not the king, because you're wielding this trident, which Poseidon gave the first king to signify his authority. And now, Volko tracked it down to the Bermuda areas, Bermuda Islands. So they journey to Bermuda, where they reach a deep cave surrounded by, obviously, aged architecture from ancient Atlantis. And also, in the cave is the trident, but it's protected by a monstrous beast called the Kraken. Now, yes, this is the mythical Kraken, but my Kraken isn't a giant squid, giant octopus-like creature. He is, or it is, I'm not going to say it's a he or she, but it is a massive creature. It's fierce. It's like a kaiju that you saw in Pacific Rim kind of thing. It's very, very fierce. You wouldn't want to mess with it. I would let the director, first off, I'd like artists to do a few versions of it before you choose one, but I'd like to have still some sort of tentacle-like things in there to be like a nice nod to the giant squid incarnation of the Kraken. But my Kraken is much more of a sea monster versus giant squid. So, and its purpose is to protect the trident of Poseidon. So that's why whenever it feels that people, that's why in the Bermuda Triangle, whenever it feels that people or anything is trying to come take the trident, it destroys it. So they go there, and Arthur doubts he'll be able to get the trident because the Kraken's basically puppy guarding it. But Volko reminds him that the people of Atlantis and most of the world, because Orm's kind of crazy at this point. I'm going to go into a little bit of it why in their final fight scene, but Orm's kind of crazy with power, and Atlantis won't be enough for him. He's going to want to take over the rest of the world once he finally gets the rest of Atlantis on his side. So Volko tries reminding him, this isn't about you. This is about Atlantis. It's about the oceans. It's about the world. It's about life. And Mira also supports him, telling him, obviously, that he's the strongest man she knows and that she believes in him. The typical supporting, girlfriend/wife stuff. Now, with great courage, Arthur decides, I'm going to do this, and he goes into the cave, to which the Kraken telepathically communicates to him, which is very odd, because this is the only creature that shows his ability, and demands who he is. Now, Arthur replies that he's Arthur, Prince of Atlantis, to which the Kraken hits him, whips him essentially, into, some object, and essentially just whips him, responding that only the King of Atlantis can set foot here. Not a prince, not anyone, just only the king can set foot here and get the trident. Now, he tries fighting the Kraken, but it doesn't work. The Kraken is just too powerful, and it deals grueling beatings to him, causing him to start fading out until he sees visions of his mother and his father. Now, his father tells him to stop trying to be human or Atlantean, because he's both, and he needs to accept the fact that he's both. His mother, builds off of that, telling him that he's the true heir to Atlantis, and for the sake of the people, which we see flashbacks of Arthur visiting the people like he did earlier, and, that he needs to overcome this challenge and lead Atlantis. Now, this really speaks to Arthur. It'd be a very powerful scene in this film. This is actually my most favorite scene to write, and it'd be hopefully everybody's favorite scene to see. But, he finally accepts who he truly is and lets out an incredibly massive telepathic message to every aquatic creature, basically saying, and I put this in all caps, I am your king. He says it directly, he says it with passion, he says it like he believes it, it's true, he is their king. Now, with this whole time, Arthur's had a mental block on him, and keeping him from using his full abilities, because he's been, fighting this urge, to be, if he's human, or, the fact that he's Atlantean, he's been fighting it, but he just finally embraces it. He knows he's both, and that's fine. So with the mental block gone, he uses his full range of abilities and commands the Kraken. Doesn't suggest the Kraken, he commands the Kraken. It takes the trident of Poseidon, truly accepting his birthright in a moment that is essentially beyond normal comprehension of regal authority. This is the most kingly you're going to get of being a king. So, with the power and true authority of the Seven Seas, Arthur with Volko and Mera journey back to Atlantis to confront Orm and his Atlantean army. So once they reach Atlantis, Volko and Mera go to find Arthur's mother, while Arthur finds Orm. Hopefully, the plan is that Arthur will be able to talk Orm out of it, but as soon as he finds Orm is preparing an invasion of the surface world already. Orm is just crazy. Now, it's revealed that the reason why Orm snapped is because he's been pressured from day one to take over Atlantis from, his father. His father's dead now, though. But he's been pressured to, take over Atlantis, be the ruler that he's supposed to be, kind of thing. Kind of the opposite of Arthur. While Arthur was very not pushed to it, he just kind of happened to get into it. Orm was pushed into it, and it's kind of, he's been pushed so much that as soon as he got it, he doesn't really know what to do with it. He's just crazy. So Arthur tries stopping the Atlantean military by showing them the trident of Poseidon to prove his authority, but most of the soldiers believe that it's only a myth, and with Orm urging them on, they don't really pay attention to it. Sorry about that. But sick of dealing with Orm's crap, Arthur summons the Kraken, proving his claim to the throne, and orders Orm to step down as the king, saying that he is actually the firstborn, not Orm, and that it is Arthur's duty to be king, and that's why he wields the trident of Poseidon, which is, yet again, the ultimate sign of authority over Atlantis and the Seven Seas. Sorry for my skipping over my words, tripping over my tongue kind of thing. But Orm, though, using magic, because like I said, Orm uses magic quite a bit, summons a large serpent to fight the Kraken, to even out the odds. Now, obviously, this isn't as powerful as the Kraken, but it's enough to keep the Kraken at bay. So while the two monsters battle it out, which, be a beautiful scene, hard to really, like, with today's technology, a specific rim showed perfectly that you can do this type of fight scene with two giant monsters underwater, so it can happen now. But it'd be a really cool scene to see, very creative, see the monsters battling out, different abilities monsters may have, may not have. But Orm and Arthur battle each other. Now, the Atlantean army is pretty much, feels like Arthur has proved himself and they're not attacking anymore, so it's pretty much Orm versus Arthur, the Kraken versus the serpent, the sea monster, whatever you want to call it, that Orm summoned. So they're fighting with Orm's magic balancing out with the Trident's abilities. Now, obviously it's not as powerful as the Trident, so eventually, after a somewhat lengthy battle, Arthur defeats Orm, because Arthur isn't trying to kill Orm, he's more of just trying to make Orm submit, but he finally defeats Orm, and yet again declares himself the king of Atlantis, getting Orm to, withdraw his claim to the throne, and halting, he also halts the fighting between the two beasts, between the Kraken and the monster that Orm had out there, which I'm not really going into specifics if it has a name or not, it's not really important. But anyways, Orm is put into an Atlantean prison, while Arthur is, he takes the throne. Mera joins him as his queen, which Volko, actually, he presides over the wedding, so to speak. He's like the priest of the wedding. So they get married. Mera's the queen, Arthur's the king, with Arthur's mother, who is found. She relinquishes her regality. Instead to, she'll advise Arthur when necessary, but she's not ruling anymore. So Atlantis is really up to Arthur now. So the credits, so this is where it kind of ends off here on a relatively high note. Atlantis needs to be rebuilt relatively so due to the massive fight scene, but it's a new age for Atlantis. This is the first time it's having a ruler that is half human, for one, that gives a kind of different point of view, but also at the same time it's the first time since the first king that, the true authentic king with the trident of Poseidon, resides. So it's a very different type of feel to it, if that makes sense. But the film ends there with a credit scene of Arthur reminiscing at his father's grave back, at the Curry lighthouse, until Amanda Waller approaches him, telling him about an upcoming United Nations meeting in Metropolis that she is recommending he attends because there will be some stuff on the agenda there that, will affect even Atlantis. We will learn more about that later, but anyways, Arthur tells her Atlantis has no dealings with nations on the surface world before he goes back into the ocean, to which she says to herself, not even Atlantis can fight this upcoming threat alone. So that's the end. My next one will be Justice League, so I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I'm putting a lot of effort into it. Expect it within 2 weeks probably. I'm going to try taking my time obviously with it, because the thing here is that I have to reread my past screenplays before I make a Justice League to make sure all the continuities come together appropriately and things like that. So, hope you guys enjoy this. Comment below your guys' thoughts. Subscribe if you haven't, like it, and I'll see you guys later with my future screenplays and other videos.